This is Robert from Coins and Tyrants. Today we are talking about Operation Pastorius, a Nazi attempt to create a spy network within the United States. Despite the many wars fought by the U.S., it has often been protected from enemy spies by the large oceans lying between the U.S. and the front lines. During World War II, in June of 1942, the German government attempted to establish a spy network that would work to destabilize the U.S. and knock it out of the war. The year was 1942, and following the December 7, 1941 Pearl Harbor attack, the United States was at war with the Empire of Japan and Nazi Germany. Japan was pushing further into the Pacific, recently capturing the impenetrable fortress of Singapore. The U.S. was starting to push back against the expanding Japanese empire in the Pacific, which would culminate in the Battle of Midway, which is where the U.S. started changing the tide of the war in the Pacific. Meanwhile, the Nazis were beginning the Holocaust and the invasion of the Soviet Union. Shortly after declaring war on the U.S., Hitler had ordered a secret mission to cripple the United States' industrial capacity. This mission was the brainchild of Walter Kapp, a German immigrant to the U.S. and a member of the Bund, which was the American Nazi Party. This mission was codenamed Operation Pastorius after Franz Daniel Pastorius, who was the founder of Germantown, Pennsylvania, which is now part of Philadelphia, and it was the first permanent German-American settlement and the gateway for subsequent immigrants from Germany. Kapp wanted men who spoke English, were familiar with the United States, and had knowledge of a skilled trade to give them cover while in the U.S. The men he received, however, did not match up to this standard. Most of the 8 men chosen to act as the saboteurs, which did include 2 American citizens, had been illegal immigrants to the U.S. before the war and had only worked odd jobs, lacking the skilled trade that Kapp was looking for. One of the men hardly even spoke any English, showing the Nazi desperation to find men for this mission. These men were recruited by the prospect of large bonuses, promotions, and good jobs when Germany inevitably won the war. Most of the men do not appear to even have been active Nazis before they were recruited into this mission. These spies were tasked with sabotaging American economic targets and spreading a wave of terror that would increase an anti-war sentiment within the U.S. The men were trained at a 3-week-long course that included gym classes, demolition training, and learning patriotic American songs so they could blend in better. The initial targets included hydroelectric plants at Niagara Falls, the Aluminum Company of America's plants in Illinois, Tennessee, and New York, and locks on the Ohio River, along with many other targets. They were given counterfeit birth certificates, social security cards, draft deferment cards, nearly $175,000 in U.S. money, and driver's licenses. That $175,000, with inflation taken into account, is more than $3 million today, which is a lot of money. The group is split into 2 teams, with one team set to land in Florida and the other to land in New York. Before the mission even began, the team was having issues. The team leader, George Dosh, left a folder containing the entire plan of the mission on a train while moving through France to get to the U-boats that would take them to the U.S. The folder was found by a German intelligence officer, but if it had been discovered by the Allies, the whole plan would have been a bust. Before the mission, the men went to a bar in Paris, got drunk, and one of them drunkenly said that he was a secret agent to everyone in the bar. But despite this, the mission was still set to go ahead. When launching from the U-boats, the men wore German army uniforms so that if they were spotted, they would be given the rights of a prisoner of war, rather than being executed as most spies are. On June 13th, the New York team landed on Long Island, where they buried their explosives, primers, incendiaries, and uniforms, and put on civilian clothes to begin an expected 2-year campaign in the sabotage of American defense-related production. It was at this moment, however, they were discovered by an unarmed Coast Guardsman. The men had already changed out of their uniforms. However, the Coast Guardsman was very suspicious, because there was just a bunch of dudes chilling on a beach during wartime, especially when the Germans offered him $260 to walk away. Because he was unarmed, he feigned cooperation, took the money, and then immediately reported it to his commander, even going so far as to give the money to his superiors. An armed patrol returned to the site and found only the buried equipment, leading to a massive manhunt. Additionally, the U-boat had gotten stuck on a sandbar and was clearly seen by the Coast Guardsman as it was trying to rev its engine to clear the sandbar. The second group came ashore wearing bathing suits, and German Navy hats. After landing ashore, they threw away their hats, put on civilian clothes, and started their mission by boarding trains to Illinois and Ohio. While evading the authorities, the men did not complete any of their objectives, instead using their large supply of cash to buy drugs, alcohol, and prostitutes. At this point, Dosch told another spy, Ernst Peter Berger, that he had no intention of going through with the mission and planned to report the plot to the FBI, and Berger also agreed to defect to the U.S. On the 15th of June, Dosch phoned the New York office of the FBI to explain who he was, but ended the call when the agent answering doubted his story. 4 days later, he took a train to Washington, D.C. and walked into the FBI headquarters, where he finally gained their attention by showing them the operation's budget of $84,000 in cash. During the next 2 weeks, the other 7 men were arrested using the information provided by Dosch. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover did not mention that Dosch had surrendered himself and claimed credit for the FBI for discovering the spy game. Over the course of this spy mission, not a single target was hit. In fact, there wasn't even an attempt by the spies to hit a target. The military tribunal for the 8 defendants was held on August 1, 1942. 2 days later, all were found guilty and sentenced to death. Roosevelt commuted Berger's sentence to life in prison and Dosch's to 30 years because they had surrendered themselves and provided key information about the others. The others were executed on August 8, 1942 in the electric chair. Several others were arrested for having aided the spies, but in 1948, President Truman granted clemency to everyone involved that was still alive, dependent on immediate deportation to Western Germany and never returning to the U.S. Despite having done very little, this operation would cause panic among the American populace to skyrocket, thinking German spies were everywhere and would destroy the U.S. with tons of explosives. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like and subscribe, or check out our other videos. Thank you.